Hello everyone. In this video, I would like to solve a task where we have a list of integer numbers and I would like to find out which number is the maximum value and which number is the minimum value within the list. So to solve that task, I would like to write it in the Python format. So assume that we have a variable or the list called nums and there are numbers inside it, like let's say 2, 1, 3, 5, 9, 17, and 15. And so I gotta create two more variables for maximum value and the minimum value. Since we write this code in Python, we cannot just call our variables such as max or mim because Python compiler can think that it is something like function, some kind of reserved word. But in order to mention that it's a variable, you have to call them as we wish. But in my case, I call it max underscore value, all right, or minimum underscore value to mention that it is variables. And values for these two variables should be the first integer in that list. Nums 0 index. So for that purpose, I gotta create the for loop for I in range. I gotta pay attention on the range function parameters because usually when you use for loop, we usually start from 0 because 0 is the first index in programming languages. But in order to solve this task, we have to start from the first actually from the second index 1. This is the first index 0, this is second index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I start from the from the integer 1 because I want to compare if 1 is greater than 2 or is it less than 2. So it's going to be like comparison between numbers. So that's why I start from the index 1, which is the second number, second integer in other words. And I'm going to iterate till the last um, last index of the nums list by writing the function len, which is length of nums list. Okay, so I have to create the two statements. If nums with the index I actually is more than the maximum value, so the maximum value should, let's say, restored with the current greater number in the list. Elif nums I is less than the minimum value, then the minimum value, minimum values number should be also restored with the current number in the loop. So when we want to print the numbers, the max value is max value and the minimum value is minimum value. All right. So that's the approach how we can solve this task. Let me explain you step by step, okay? So let's use this list. So for I in range, okay, let's go step by step. So I create the list nums, then I create two variables, max and minimum value. So let's use the Python command to mention that maximum value. Let's use actually another color to mention that we are doing the explanation. Yeah. So all right. So the maximum value right now is 2. The minimum value is also 2. Let's apply another color actually. Maybe this one, yeah. So for I in range 1, so right now I is 1. Let's apply the iteration like this. When I is 1, so we say that nums 1 actually, the second number 1, is it greater than number 2? In other words, is 1 greater than 2? No. If statement is not satisfied, then we go to the elif statement and we check if 1 is less than 2. Yeah, then we say that um, 1 in this line is gonna be stored in the minimum value variable. Since the mean value variable number was 2, now we restored it with a minimum value as 1. So keep it in mind. Minimum value is 1 right now. Okay, we have to iterate another loop where I is 2. So we check nums I2, which is this number 3. So let's apply another color. So we check if 3 is greater than maximum value. Maximum value is still under the 0 index, which is integer 2. If 3 is more than 2, then 3 has to be stored in the max value. Alright, so third loop. Nums with index 3, so 5. If 5 is more than maximum value, and maximum value right now is 3, then we have to store that 5 into the maximum value variable. But during these loops, elif won't be um, checked because since we use such structure of the statements, if one of them is satisfied, then we use only one if or elif statement. For example, if the first if statement is satisfied, then we write only this part. But if it's not satisfied, we jump into the elif part. So for loop right now, nums with index 4. We check if 9 is more than the current value of maximum value variable is 5, then 9 is stored into the max value. Alright, fifth loop, which is the 17 in the list. We check 17 is more than 9, yeah. So 17 is stored into the max value. And the last loop we check the number 15. If 15 is more than 17, it is not correct. Then we jump into the elif statement and check if 15 is less than the minimum value. What was the minimum value number? It was 1. If it's 1, if it's like that, if 15 is less than 1, then we should change the minimum value but it's not correct. It's not specified. So in the last loop, none of these statements were uh, applied. All right. So we have to understand that the maximum value stored into the max value variable was 17, and the minimum value, the last occurrence as the minimum value was 1. So that's how we get our values. Maximum value is 17, and the minimum value is 1. We can use if and elif structure, but we can also use if and again if. But there is no huge difference between them. Just what's the difference when we apply if, elif, and else structure, and what's the difference between when we use if. We could use if elif as we used it already. We can use also if. What's the difference between them? For example, if the if statement is not satisfied, we jump into the elif. And if elif is satisfied, then yeah, elif is applied in the loop. But what's the difference between two ifs or three ifs? That if the first if statement is satisfied, we jump into the second if. If it's not satisfied, then we jump into the third if. And if it is satisfied, then we have two ifs that were used in the for loop. We can use either if and elif as it is, but we could also use if, where nums and so on, and also if to check the minimum value as well, both for maximum value and there is some part in the body of the if statement, and nums I is less than minimum value. How could it work? For example, let's say we are using still the same list, all right? So if nums I, which is number 1, is more than the current value as maximum value, 2, it's not correct. So we jump into the elif. So the minimum value is 1. All right, we jump into the 3 and check if 3 is more than 2, then the maximum value is equal to 3. But also, at the same time, we check the if statement as well for the minimum value. But it is preferably to use if elif as it is here, written here, because it is less consuming time and it is better to use because here we have to check both of these statements, even though if the first if statement is worked and we got our result, still the second if will be also checked. But in this case, one of them should be true, let's say. Yeah. So this is a solution how we can check the list for the maximum value and the minimum value.